Give me a hell yeah!
Hello everyone, welcome to a history of wrestling games presented by Pro Wrestling and MMA News. I am Hubbs Cero Deniro, and I am going to be your host as we go on this journey of checking out the wrestling games of yesteryear. We aren't going to do this chronologically, where we'll be bouncing around looking at 2 or 3 games each episode from varying gaming generations. Also, this isn't a review of said games, because it's not my job to convince you to buy these games. In fact, some of these games go for quite a bit of change. I'm looking at you, JWP Pure Wrestle Queens. Anyway, let's get started. The first of 2 games is one of the very first wrestling games I have ever played, if you can call it a wrestling game. It's WWF Wrestlemania for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Developed by Acclaim and released in 1989. What we have here is quite possibly the most basic of all wrestling games on the planet. We are giving a roster of only 6 wrestlers who duke it out in a ring. We have Not Hollywood Hulk Hogan, Honky Tonk Man, Ted DiBiase, Macho Man Randy Savage, the 8th wonder of the world Andre the Giant, and my favorite wrestler of all time, Bam Bam Bigelow. Honestly, barely anybody gives Bam Bam Bigelow any love these days. Moving on, the format is pretty simple. 2 characters compete and beat the crap out of each other until their opponent's energy meter is low or depleted, and then go for the pin. Unfortunately, you only have a small handful of attacks, usually a punch, a headbutt, an elbow attack, or a kick. Sometimes you can get a running attack if you somehow build up momentum, and some wrestlers only have 1 body slam and 1 turnbuckle attack. What's pretty interesting is Hogan is the only character in the game that can body slam Andre the Giant. A nice little nod to their infamous WrestleMania 3 match. Honestly, it feels more like a fighting game than a wrestling game. It's rather disappointing. Adding to the disappointment is how incredibly difficult the computer opponent is. It's very brutal. Or maybe I just suck at the game after having not played it for nearly 30 years. Regardless, it feels unfair with how fast the computer is able to throw those elbows. I can't even mash them out that fast. Honestly, the best thing about WWF Wrestlemania is its music. With what few musical tracks the game has, they are pretty catchy and memorable. Besides the title theme, there is also 8-bit versions of each wrestler's theme in the game. Yes, we also get to listen to Hulk Hogan's Real American and glorious 8-bit goodness. Take a listen to a couple more tracks from the game. The soundtrack is easily the best part of the game, and the thing that holds up well to this day. The character sprites are rather decent too when you compare it to later WWF games that would be released in the next few years for the NES. They are large and detailed. They actually tried to make them look like the wrestlers that they represent. Can't say the same for WrestleMania Challenge or Steel Cage, where everyone looks like a palette swap of each other. WrestleMania hasn't aged too well gameplay-wise, but it's still a fun little nostalgia trip. Now, the second game we are taking a look at is one of the many obscure games I will try to cover. This is Power Move Pro Wrestling for the first PlayStation. Power Move Pro is the first game developed by Yuke's, whom you are probably familiar with. Power Move Pro was originally a licensed New Japan Pro Wrestling video game originally titled as NJPW Tokan Retsuden, with several licensed wrestlers from New Japan Pro Wrestling. However, that changed when the game was localized stateside. This is mainly due to New Japan Pro Wrestling not being as well known outside of Japan. All the in-game wrestlers were renamed and given some minor tweaks in the looks department. I couldn't tell you who is who, but there are some sites out there that think they know a few of the New Japan Pro wrestlers. Speculation says that Keiji Muto and his alter ego the Great Muta, Tenzan, Tiger Hattori, Kero-chan, and Kanemoto were part of the roster. Please feel free to comment and correct me with the proper information of the roster. I would love to know who Malibu Mike, Lance, and Orange are supposed to be. Aside from the roster, Power Move Pro is most notable as being the template for another wrestling gaming franchise Yuke's would bring us years later, that being WWF SmackDown. Almost everything in terms of gameplay presentation started here and was later improved upon with SmackDown's release in 2000. Yuke's did release a few more New Japan games between Power Move and SmackDown, but they never saw release outside of Japan. The gameplay for this early PS1 3D wrestling game is pretty basic, which is to be expected honestly. A small roster, limited number of game modes, all of which are 1v1, and a very limited moveset. We're talking maybe 2 types of attacks, 2 grapple moves, all based on your opponent facing towards or away, plus a couple of standing or ground submissions and a running attack. However, even with a limited moveset, Power Move Pro Wrestling had way more wrestling moves than most games that we had in the early to mid-90s. One of the more interesting gameplay elements developed by Yuke's would be the manual camera system. In Power Move Pro Wrestling, you can set the angle of the camera to be placed above the ring or at ring level, and during matches you can rotate the ring at 90-degree angles using the shoulder buttons. This, however, is a feature we would see removed down the line. The gameplay experience is pretty interesting when you look at this game as more of a prototype for future Uke titles down the line. It's an alright game that is fun to enjoy, to kill half an hour, but really there isn't enough variety to keep you going. And so here we are. Our journey has begun as we start to dig into the world of retro wrestling games. If you like this, please hit the like and sub button. Got any game suggestions? Leave them in the comments section. Also, while you're at it, don't forget to follow the Pro Wrestling and MMA News Facebook page and join our very, very busy Discord server. Links in the description below. I am Hubbs Cero Deniro, and thank you for watching.